Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to our April Supply Chain Management webinar. A few housekeeping things before we get started. If you have a question during the presentation, you can either send me a question via text, or you can raise your hand, and if I pick that up during the webinar, I will try to answer that right then and there. If not, I will stay on the webinar after I conclude in about 15 or 20 minutes, and I'll handle any questions at that time that haven't been answered. So let's get right to it today and talk about how to improve performance to schedule using a concept called time fences. What we're going to be looking at today are three areas: time fence principles, how to create a demand time fence, and when you get the demand time fence crafted, the policies and procedures you need to have in place to make time fences work. So let's talk about this concept of time fences. I especially like the graphic in the upper left-hand side: barbed wire, razor wire, concertina wire. It really is the concept that most master schedulers would like to do to their master production schedule: keep everybody's hands off it once they have created it. But the concept of time fences is based in reality, that no matter how good your schedule is, as soon as you release the schedule to production, things are going to happen either out in production or with your customer orders or with your sales department, where people are going to want to change orders that are already out in production or bring new material, new orders in shorter than standard lead time. The concept of time fences looks out from today into the future on your master production schedule and tries to establish points in time that say anything inside this point of time, it requires this to change. Anything within this area here between this time fence and this time fence requires that to change. The concept is putting some rules in place that will allow you to make educated, realistic changes to your master production schedule after it has been released to the floor and you're producing material. That's all time fences are about. Now, we do this with two particular time fences: the demand time fence and the planning time fence. And that's what we're going to spend the next couple minutes talking about. How do you determine where the demand time fence is and how you determine where the planning time fence is? So, now that we've completed time fences, now we're going to look at how to create that demand time fence. This chart here shows our planning horizon. In this case, it is 9 periods of time. Those periods of time can be anything you want it to be. They can be days, they can be weeks, they can be months, they can be quarters. The concept is this: we have our capacity for our production process. That's that black line at the very top. In this example here, going out 3 time periods, most of our capacity for the next 3 time periods is consumed manufacturing stuff that we actually have customer orders for. We have promised customers delivery of that material on certain dates. We crafted a plan that, if we execute the plan correctly, it will deliver the product to the customer when we promised that we would deliver it to them. So this 3 periods of time, at the end of it, is where we would establish our demand time fence. The demand time fence is anything from today out to the demand time fence 99% of what we're doing in that period of time is for stuff that we have already promised delivery to our customers. So if we have a good schedule, don't make any changes to it, we will deliver those orders on time. Now, beyond that, the next 3 periods of time, periods 4 through 6, as we go out further in time, less of our capacity is consumed by actual orders, the green there, and more of our capacity is what we plan to do to support our forecasted demand. So over the next 3 time periods, our forecasted demand is about 50% of what we're utilizing our capacity for. At the end of that 3 periods, period 6, is our planning time fence. Beyond the planning time fence, most of our capacity is consumed by orders that we have on the books to meet forecasted demand. We don't actually have customer orders for this yet. We have a master schedule that says we need to be producing these items in this period of time because that's what we think we're going to be selling. So the demand time fence, where you create it, is really a function of your business or your industry. Some of those time periods could be measured in days. Some of them could be measured in weeks. Some of them could be measured in months. But to find out where the demand time fence is, look out how far into the future. You've got your production capacity completely loaded with stuff that you've already promised delivery to customers on. That's where you create your demand time fence. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going into is once you have those demand and planning time fences established, now we need to create the policies and procedures to make them work. Back to this slide again. Now, we've created a schedule. We've got production running. And our friends in sales come in and say that they've got this rush order that they need to drop into week number 2. That happens all the time. What happens if we make that change is extremely expensive. So now I'm going to put the ball in your court, and we're going to do a little survey here. We make a change to our master production schedule inside the demand time fence. In your opinion, what is the #1 cost of making changes inside the demand time fence? You only get to pick one. I'm going to give you about 45 seconds to make your choices, and then we'll see what everybody has to say. Okay, I got a couple more of you left to go, and we're just about ready to close it out. Okay, closing the poll now. So let's see what you all had to say. Interesting distribution. 33% of you said that the main cost is overtime to support the change. And then we had a split between setup and customer satisfaction, 22%. Expediting and missed deliveries brought up the rear. The interesting thing here, every one of these is part of the cost of making a change inside the demand time fence. The most obvious, running overtime to meet the delivery. The least quantifiable, customer satisfaction, because the customer may decide to vote with their feet and take their business elsewhere, and you'll never be able to calculate how much business you lost because you missed delivery. All right, so if we know that the changes inside the demand time fence cost a lot of money, the policies that we need to establish are who gets to make those changes. And it's not the master production scheduler. Typically, changes inside the demand time fence are a choice between delivering this order to this customer on time or taking this customer and put their order ahead of everybody else and deliver their order on time. The choice to make that rightly belongs to our friends in sales, because if we establish the policy that you can bring an order inside the demand time fence, but you also have to tell me which order I'm moving out, then it is their choice of which customer gets priority service and which customer they have to tell, sorry, but you're not getting your order on time. Now, the real world, and I've seen this in many companies, customer service will tell you to drop in one order, but they'll forget to tell the other customer that their order is getting delayed. I've seen various ways of handling this. One of my clients, Firmenich, they maintain 20% of their daily capacity uncommitted, so that they can do what are called drop-in orders inside the demand time fence. Now, their demand time fence is only 3 days. They have a short production cycle. That 20% is reserved for their Class A customers. You know, those customers, that small amount of customers that provides most of your profit. So they've taken that approach, and it works very well for them. Another client of mine, a current client, Ytech Industries, they're a job shop. They cut and form wire. They don't start a job until they get an order from a customer. They don't make a standard product. It's whatever the customer wants. We have been working for about a year now trying to figure out the demand time fence there. And in a job shop environment, the demand time fence is actually which is our bottleneck work center at this period of time. In either one of these scenarios, whether it's Firmenich making to stock or Ytech making to order, we've set in some policies and procedures that allow us to manage the changes inside the demand time fence. Now, what happens if there's a change outside the demand time fence? In the next period, between where the demand time fence is and where the planning time fence is, that's the area where the master scheduler gets to make the trades, talking to production, talking to customer service, talking to supply chain management. Because here we are balancing competing interest of actual customer orders versus forecasted demand and making trade-offs there. That's the master scheduler's job. That's their playground. That's what they get paid to do. Beyond the planning time fence, this is completely the master scheduler. The changes they make there are virtually free because we're talking so far into the future. The only constraints that the master scheduler has there is what is the production plan itself. That's the thing that they are constrained by. And in this context, we have basically only one rule. You got the production schedule, keep capacity fully utilized. To meet our delivery requirements to orders that we've already placed, that customers have already placed with us. That's inside the demand time fence, and that's really where we have to have the policies and procedures. We have to establish the demand time fence, and we have to enforce those rules and procedures to make sure that the changes that are made there, everyone is aware of and signed off on, and that we minimize them as much as possible. So what we've covered over the past 15 minutes or so are time fence principles, how to figure out where your demand time fence is, and then we've talked about some policies and procedures and some examples of ways to use time fences to maintain your schedule integrity and improve your on-time delivery performance. So that's it for today. If you have any questions, I'll hang around for a couple minutes. If you weren't able to see the entire webinar, this webinar and several of our previous webinars are on our website. You can view them as a YouTube video at any time. And if there's nothing else, I'll see you all next week. And now I'm open for questions.